Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming back at you with another Wargaming in Miniature video. Today's video, we're going to continue on with my World War II project updates. Okay, so in today's update, I'm going to discuss a couple of things that I had planned for our live stream, but we had actually lost power for a short time, and that was an ordeal. But now we're back. We're back up and running. Everything's good. It was just, I guess, just too much of a drain, too hot outside, or whatever. People are using too much power. But now that we're back, instead of just waiting till next Wednesday, I figured I'd just go ahead and record this video and then upload it for you guys. Okay, the first thing I want to say is we played Sunday. That video is online. You can go check that out. We played Battle Group. It would be the first time I've ever played Battle Group, and with a live opponent, I should say. It did take a while to explain all the rules to him. I realized that it took quite a while. I'm going to say probably close to 45 minutes. I thought I could just knock it out and say, this is how it's done. But there are a lot of different rules that I wanted him to know. And so I'm going to have to try to figure out a way to maybe script that. Like maybe write a little, I'm going to, like, these are the rules I have to go over for myself to keep my mind straight and shorten the amount of time it takes for someone to understand the rules. Or we can skip rules unless they become important. But I don't want to do that because I don't want my players to say, why didn't you tell me about this rule? Or I didn't know he could do that. I don't want that to be done. To help alleviate in-game delays, I made a scenario special rule sheet, which you can see here on the screen. The overall gist of the game, to me, was I wasn't prepared. Right? I mean, I got my ass kicked tactically. Mason, first of all, he's on the defense, so he doesn't really have to do any maneuvering. He doesn't have to move. He doesn't even, I personally don't even think he had all of his guys in a position where they could shoot at me. He basically did a layered defense, and I never even got close to his first layer. Now, half of that is him talking me into doing something that I already knew was wrong, but he mentioned it and he talked about it and he suggested it in such a way that he was on my side, right? And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to do it that way. And that's running through the flooded area. About halfway through the game, I realized that I was making a drastic mistake by running through the flooded area, and I should have stayed on the causeway. But we'll get into that. We'll get in. I want to go into an after-action review here in just a bit, but the first part of this is lessons learned as a game master, not as a player. Right? Player will come second. As a game master, I realized that I was looking in my books too many times. Every time we did something, I had to look in the rule book. A mine, like you drive over the mine, look in the rule book. Go over the water, look in the rule book. How far, move the tank, look in the rule book. All this stuff I was doing but I was doing it because I wanted to get it right and because I didn't know what I needed to look up. Right? So this, I didn't have precognition. So after the game, I wrote this sheet here, and it's actually much less than this. If you ignore all the air assets, that's really all we need. We only need the priority table that I had to look in the rulebook to find the priority table every time I wanted to do a priority mission. On the medium mortars and the pack howitzers, I was looking up their 442 all the time. I don't know why. I even looked up this 90-inch range once. The bazooka and the Panzerfaust didn't come into play. It looks like the bazooka has, and this is weird. This is something I told Mason. I said, my bazooka can't do anything. Well, it's actually a lie. The bazooka gets 3 dice looking for 5s or better if he gets a hit. So he could technically kill 3 people with a single shot. And then he gets 2 shots. So, got to get close. Got to get within 10 inches, though. The light mortar also, I was doing the light mortars wrong. I was just, light mortars for suppression, no problem. But if I'm rolling to hit, I have to make my observation test. I roll to hit. If I hit, then there's same thing as bazooka. 3 dice, 5s or better, which I didn't do. I just did 1. So yeah, so that was definitely lesson learned. So by typing this information up, it is hopefully going to prevent me from looking in the book. I had to look in the scenario a couple of times to make sure the Germans had 4 75s and the Americans only had 3, right? But just by putting it on this quick reference sheet, it's going to be in the players' faces, because I'm going to give every player one of these. It's just a printout sheet and just hand it out. And then they will know exactly what they got. By putting this 5+ on the air table, that lets me know that if they roll, or if they draw an air chit, that they're going to need to roll a 5 or better. That's just a reminder, right? So I don't have to look it up in the rules, even though a 5+ is pretty straightforward, but you can't remember every rule all the time. And then here's the die rolls to see if they get the P47, P51, 109, 190, right? And then I also put or here, so the player can decide, it'll remind the player that if he doesn't want the big hitter, he can go with the small hitter. I'm not exactly sure why you'd want to do that. But if you want the 4 machine guns and the 130 instead of the 220s and some bombs, I mean, there's still a chance you'll get some bombs up here too. But as a P47, I don't know why you would want a P51, because you got 8 machine guns, which doesn't really matter. I learned. I thought it was rate of fire 3 per machine gun. But it does say that if you've got 4 or more machine guns, the rate of fire is just 10, right? So, yeah, so I just put 4 to 8 machine guns, rate of fire of 10, which means all 3 of these guys, 4, 6, and 8. This guy doesn't have machine guns. I went ahead and looked up the penetration of the 20 and the 30, and it was 1 and 3, but aircraft say you get a +2 penetration, so because of the high rate of fire of the cannons. So, and it's also against rear armor because of the downward angle. You're hitting the top armor or whatever. And so I went ahead and put that all on there to help players know what they're up against, and to help remind me as well, because this sheet is not only going to be in players' hands, but it's going to be in my hands as well. I considered making 2 of them, one for the U.S. and then one for the Germans, and putting less information on there, just their own personal information. But I decided against that. Because there's so little on these pages, it was easier just to make it 1. And plus, it'll help both players understand where everybody's coming from. So, yeah. And I had to look up the 155. Once I looked up the priority artillery mission, and then I decided I was going to roll on the core artillery, I had to roll the priority. I had to roll the comms check. And once I did, I rolled and I got the 155s, and I had no idea what the 155s could do. So I had to look it up and then found out it was 7-3, right? But that's really unimportant because I didn't get any hits. All I got was pins. But having to look all that up takes time. If I hit naval guns, I would have had to look this up. So instead of looking it up, I just put it as part of the regimental chart. I did not bother putting penetration on here because the Germans don't have any armor, so I don't need to worry about it. If the Germans had priority, then I would have put penetration on theirs because there's a chance they might actually target the Sherman. There's only one Sherman. So up here on the dedicated, you'll notice the US, I didn't bother putting pen, but the German dedicated does have the pen. And the medium mortar, that number in parentheses, is the pen. That's just to speed things up, really, just speeding things up. Now, artillery doesn't go against top armor, I don't think. I think it goes against side armor. I'm going to have to double check. If it goes against top armor, then that is cool. These bombs, apparently, you place it very much like a spotter round, and then you roll to deviate. But because it is self-spotted, right, the pilot is doing it himself, it deviates an additional D6, which I would think that it would deviate less, right? You would think, but he's not a dive bomber, right? They're both level bombers, so they do a gentle slope and drop the bombs. Okay. I also learned that once the aircraft shows up, it doesn't leave. I thought that when an aircraft shows up, it flies in, drops its payload, and then it leaves. Where that's not the case. Because you can drop some of your payload and then come around for another pass, right? And then I also learned that the first time a side takes an air attack, they draw a chit, and then if the plane gets shot down, the pilot side takes 2 chits. So it would behoove the player to fly in, drop his entire payload, and fly away, because then they get 1 chit and you don't get any, and then possibly you'd get some kills if they're clumped up or whatever. Plus, all the bombs and all the rockets and machine guns and all that could possibly cause more hits and pins. That's a strategy the players are going to have to come up with. That's not for me to decide. And then I put that down here at the bottom just to also remind me, so I don't have to look it up. 1 BR chit when attacked by aircraft for the first time, and then 2 BR chits if aircraft is shot down, right? So that's good. And then I looked up the stats for a small bomb and a large bomb, and I put it on there, and rockets and machine guns and cannons. They have ammo. So by having ammo, that tells me that he can pretty much loiter on the table for at least 3 turns using those machine guns or cannons. Okay, and then finally, I up here at the top, I reviewed the special rules for the actual scenario, like the sniper hideout and the objectives and all that stuff. The bridge, the church, and Lamotley Road Junction. I'm going to point that out like, hey, that's the Lamotley Road Junction, just so they know. It's the road junction we used in the game. These are the same objectives we used in the game, so that's no problem. I just want to put it on there to make it easy for everybody to know. Now, the flooded ground, I added this word here, no morale, because I constantly had to look to see if it said morale check in the book, and it didn't. If you go across the low ground between the river and the western slopes. It's dangerous ground. 1d6 inches. A 6 is still only 5 inches, and a d3 casualties. Okay, so that's pretty much the way it is in the book. Causeway of Fear. And then it says before each move action. Okay, so what we were doing was I was moving and then I'd roll the die, which I think is more reasonable, honestly. No, before each action, roll a die. On a 1 or a 2, they take 1d3 casualties. Theoretically, on one double move, you could take 6 casualties. Theoretically. And then after, and a morale check. So you got to take those morale checks immediately upon taking casualties. So if he rolls on his first move and he rolls a 1 or a 2, he takes a d3 casualties. We go to the morale check, right? And then he gets his second move if he's still okay. And then he does it again, 1d6. So yeah, it's pretty much, but at least you'd be moving 10 inches possibly, instead of the flooded ground where you're moving 2d6 inches, right? Which a lot of times you want that to be low. So 3s and 4s. So you might be moving like 7 inches potentially and taking casualties. Okay. Unmarked minefield. It is when the M4 finishes each move action. Let's go ahead and bolden that. Boop. Each move action. Not just move your full 14 or 28 inches on the road. Yeah, because if he's on the road, he gets a 14-inch move. So if he moves 14 inches down the road, you roll. And then if he decides to move another 14 inches down the road, you roll. So that's 28 inches. He could get all the way across the battlefield. Speaking of the roadblocks, I'm going to skip over a little bit. The roadblocks, they're not hard and fast roadblocks. They're improvised roadblocks, which I could put in there improvised roadblocks. But what that basically means are they're not fully functional. They're there because the bazooka guy shot them in a previous battle. And so they veered off the road and crashed, or they burning a Hulk right in the middle of the road or something like that. So it says they have to be placed on a road, because off-road, it has no effect at all. But it also counts as an obstacle, not impassable terrain. So all that does is it reduces your movement by a d6. But it is considered hard cover. So infantry can run up and take cover behind it or whatever. But as an obstacle, it'll reduce their movement as well if they're trying to move on the road. Not that road matters to infantry. It doesn't. They should just file around. They can just file around it. So that would change how these obstacles were placed on the table, because Mason put one on the road close to his town and one off the road on the slope. Not all of us not understanding what was going on, but after rereading the roadblocks, another thing, okay, well, let's do this kind of in order. Bocage, right? I kind of broke the rules down into its basic form. I took all the flavor text out of what a bocage is and how you build them and put them on the table and stuff like that. But basically it's hard cover if touching on either side. Now infantry move is a d6, just like difficult terrain. So if you're trying to cross it, you roll a dice. That's how many inches you get to move. The M4 has to start its turn next to the bocage, and then after a double move is placed on the other side of the bocage. So that's good. And we never had to look that up because my M4 got blown up way before it before that. And the bocage blocks line of sight on the same level unless you're touching it. So if you're touching it, you can see past it, just like a hedge, right? Now, there is a rule in there that I just kind of discard, and I'm probably not going to bother with it. It says that only a tank is obscured if behind the bocage. So I changed it, as you can see, as I put blocks line of sight. So if you are back from the bocage, you cannot be seen. But if you're up on the bocage, then you'll be obscured. And infantry on either side of the bocage is going to be considered obscured. The way and they both get hard cover, actually. I find that to be kind of weird, but what they're saying is that the bocage is a mound, but there's a ditch on both sides of the bocage. I think I got a picture somewhere of the side of a bocage, but basically, and how it was actually constructed in medieval times. Imagine a big gully / ditch, okay, a big one that goes around your field, and then when you pick those rocks up, you threw them into the ditch, and then it gradually build up. But what it builds up is the center part of that ditch. So look on the screen here. Let's see if I can't. No, I can't draw on this. Okay, but I can draw on this one. Okay, and then I can erase it. Beep. There we go. So imagine your bocage, or you've got a field, and then there's this big ditch, and then the field on the other side. And that's your ditch. And then as you gather rocks, you pile them up and they roll down to the bottom of the ditch, right? And then as you start throwing rocks into this ditch over the course of 1,000 years of plowing your fields, and then this bocage builds up like that. And what they're saying is, and this is where the hard cover comes in, the troops can be standing on either side of the bocage. Like if shots are coming in from this direction, you're still going to get hard cover because you're basically in a trench, kind of like. But if you're on the other side, you might be up here, looking over. Here he can look over and he can look over. And so either one of them would get hard cover. So what they're saying is you get hard cover either way. Either way. You're basically considered in a ditch, or you're behind a berm or something, no matter which side you're on. Taking forever. I guess I could have selected everything and then deleted it. But we'll go there. Okay, so that's why you get, hard cover on either side. And to me, I think you should also be obscured. Because if you're in a ditch with like bushes growing around it and stuff like that, you should be obscured just as if you're behind a hedge, or just as if you're in the woods or whatever, behind a wall. It's all considered obscured. So I'm going to give obscured to both sides of the bocage for infantry as well. But a tank is not obscured, or also not in cover, if he is on the front side, right? Because he's too big for that little ditch on both sides of the bocage. But on the other side, he gets the bocage as cover. So okay. We've gone into that way too long. Let's talk about the foxholes. Okay. It says the Germans have 12 foxholes. I took that to mean 12 soldiers are in foxholes, where that is not true. looking up to see what kind of cover foxholes get, which I gave Mason just hardcover, which is 4+. He should have gotten reinforced cover. But while looking that up, I saw that it says one foxhole equals or covers or is enough for 10 men to be in, right? Okay, and you get 12 of them. So technically that's 120 guys, or not exactly, because like one foxhole per squad is the way I'm envisioning this. So with 9 squads, that's 9 foxholes, or 9 units worth of foxholes, because they're not going to share. It's like, I'm not going to take 2 foxholes that cover 20 guys and put like 2.5 squads in it. I'm not going to consider that. So 1 per squad. That's 9 squads for the Germans. That's only 9. So there's still 3 left, right? And then I look, okay, well, each of the platoon leaders have their own little squad, right? So technically, the German platoons are all in foxholes, right? So the FO is the only one who's not in a foxhole. Now, if the player wants to do this, and I'm going to allow him to do it, he can not put one of his squads or escort squads, officers. If he doesn't want to put one of them in a foxhole, he can put the FO in a foxhole. I think that's okay. They don't have a senior commander. They do have a sniper. Okay? They have an FO and a sniper as kind of their support elements. The sniper hideout, right? I thought it was just obscured, hidden, and what do you call it? Also hardcover like a foxhole. But it's actually reinforced cover like a foxhole. And it can be placed anywhere west of the river. So this sniper does not have to be placed inside the Germans' deployment zone. He could be placed out in the swamp. He could be placed on the causeway. He just cannot be placed in the 82nd's deployment zone, which, he cannot be placed inside the opponent's deployment zone. Would that have changed anything? I don't know. He put this sniper in a building that could look down the causeway so that he could just shoot guys. Now, if he knew that it only had a 30-inch range, because I think Mason assumed he had further than 30 inches, would he have deployed him further forward to get shots immediately? I don't know. And with every platoon being in a foxhole, there is absolutely no reason why you would have to deploy in those bocage ditches, right? You can deploy, further forward of the bocage, or, anywhere along the front lines, because you're guaranteed to have these German foxholes. But he was not guaranteed, because I said 12 guys could be in a foxhole, not 12 squads. The units moving together, touching, worked out really well. The map worked out really well. I liked it. I didn't like the fact that I had to reach so far across the table to get to my troops. This is something that the American players are going to have to, the Germans don't really have to worry about it, because if there are 3 German players, then they will, one will sit on the right side of the table and one will sit on the left side of the table, and one will sit behind the table. So they'll have the those three edges of the village and their side of the map covered, because those three platoons are in fact have to be deployed in those areas, and so they'll only have like a couple of feet to reach. They won't have to reach all the way to the center, except for maybe the guy in the middle. Now the Americans, on the other hand, if they're going to try to get all these platoons to go up the causeway, then that's a lot of reaching to the center of the table from the sides. One side has it easier than the other side. It's just going to need to have some long arms for the Americans. I think they can do it. No big deal. Yeah, so I think we can, and I also thought about this too, with multiple players controlling their own guys, their own troops, deployment will go faster because they'll be deploying their own guys, for one thing. Now, the dice. What I was planning on doing was giving each player one die, and then he got to add his officer rating. That means there's too many. We discovered this early on. That means there's too many dice being rolled, right? Especially for let's say the German side, right? Where he's got everybody to bear and everybody can shoot, pretty much. And he's rolling 3 dice. There's a good chance he's going to get 10 squads shooting every turn, right? Not to mention the FO and the mortars and the off-board artillery. So he pretty much got to shoot those every turn because he had enough dice, right? The Americans also, with 3 dice, that gives them enough to call in all their artillery and move pretty much all their units, which the scenario is technically designed for a 1-player versus a 1-player, not a 3 versus 3. I probably should have went with a bigger scenario to give each player a sizable force, but I didn't. But we only have 4 hours, so I didn't want to bog the game down. So my dilemma is, and maybe you guys can comment in the comments, maybe help me out with this. Tell me how you've resolved it in the past if you play Battle Group. If you don't play Battle Group, maybe you have an idea of how you can resolve this. But we're supposed to roll only 2 dice and add our officers. And the Americans can add up to 5 because they have 5 officers, where the Germans can add 3. So the Germans should be getting about 7 on the die plus their 3, 10, right? Which is not enough to get all their units to fire. And, well, it is enough to get all their units to fire because they only have 9 squads, right? But not to also have all their artillery fire. So I think 2 dice is not really going to hurt the Germans because most of their shots are going to be from their artillery. Now the Americans, 3 dice is too much. But if I was to roll 2 dice and add my 5 for the officers, how do we, this is the question I have, and this is how I want to make it not fair, but manageable. I want to make it so that each player gets the right number of orders, or an amount of orders. I think what I'm going to do on both sides is give their senior commander, whoever he is, the ability. Whoever plays the senior commander is the one that's going to get all the dice. He's going to roll 2 dice. He's going to add the 5 for the officers, right? Guarantee that each platoon must get the +1 from their officer. So he's going to guarantee that each platoon gets an order, right? Or he doesn't have to. But man, he shouldn't have to, because if this platoon over here is all pinned, 100% pinned, we can't give them an order because they can't use it, right? So he should retain those and give them where they're needed, because at the end of the round, what he'll do is he'll rally those guys. So my thought process right now as we go forward, I haven't made a final decision on this. I want to hear what you guys have to say, if you think it's a good idea or if you have a better idea. I think I'm going to have the senior commander on each side roll their 2 dice, add what officers they have available on their company, right? And that is their order pool. And then the senior officer can issue orders to the subordinate platoon leaders so that they can issue orders for their troops. So it's like he rolls, he gets an 8, let's say, +5, he gets 13. He goes, okay, you get 4, I'll take 4, you can have 4, and I'll take the extra one because I'm going to call for fire. Or I'm going to give you 3 and you 3 because I need those extra dice because I'm going to call for fire. Or I'm going to give you all 8 of them because I need your unit to get moving. And that's basically what a senior officer would do. He would say, first platoon, I need you to get moving. And he would give them the orders, right? So that's what I think I would want to do. It'll put a little bit more responsibility on the senior commander. It will make him more a part of the game in a way where he will have to issue the orders, but the other players will have to talk to him and tell them what they need to do. So it'll force a conversation between the players each turn, and I think that's a good thing. So I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to just say senior commanders. Now, the Germans don't have a senior commander, but they do have an FO and a sniper. And I'm thinking whichever player is controlling the FO should also be considered the senior officer, and he's going to roll the dice. One of the other players is going to have the sniper to make it fair or split the forces up. Each of the platoon leaders also have the ability to call for the mortars in the back, and so not just the offboard artillery. The FO can call the offboard artillery and the mortars. I'm just going to leave the FO as the artillery and the platoon leaders as the mortars, and it'll make things go a lot quicker. But however, yeah. So he's going to allocate all the orders. It's not going to be an individual die roll per platoon. For one thing, that kind of slowed the game down a little bit because we had so many orders to conduct, and it also meant we had to keep track of which platoon had how many orders instead of just one big order pool, right? And everybody being on ambush, he almost never used the ambush because it never really got close enough for him to use the ambush fire. Nobody fled off the table. There was no need for any of that. A couple of units did get eliminated, but mostly first of all, the game was lost because we hit time. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. That's why the game was ended, because we got to like almost 5 hours. And I realized that I spent 45 minutes. Well, okay, so it was like 4:45. So after like 45 minutes of rules, we actually played for 4 hours, and I wanted to stop it right there because that's how long those game sessions are. And so I realized we're not going to finish. We got to clean up for the next player to show up and set up his table. So we ended it at time, and because I had taken more battle rating chits, I had lost the game, right? Which, straight up, good. That's the way it works, right? There's no tie in battle group. You either win or you lose. There has to be so many things to cause a tie, and for one thing, if both sides have different starting battle ratings, it's almost impossible to tie. Plus, he has a sniper, which is also considered a scout, and the Americans have no scouts, so that means they've automatically been out scouted. So they have to take one battle rating just for that. Then the Germans take 2 objectives, so that's 3 chits the Americans are going to take pretty much on turn 1. And then the Americans will take the bridge, which means the Germans will take 1 chit on turn 1. Guaranteed. That's the name of that tune. So the Americans are already starting 2 chits down. And then the push over the causeway will be difficult. Okay, let's talk about an after action review. I kind of want to, this is the second part of this video. I'm going to try to take very little time reviewing this. Let's get a good color you can see on the map. There we go. I got my pencil. Is there a way to make it wider? Well, if I wasn't using the pencil, if I was using the ink pen or the paintbrush, it would, that's right, that's this next one, right? Paintbrush, yeah, I can make it much bigger. So we'll just use the pencil because I think that's good. Okay, so this was the setup. This building right there is the church, and he had his FO located in that church, right? I had my FO located in this building right there. Because you have a 70-inch view spotting distance, I could place artillery anywhere within 70 inches, which is pretty much the entire map, because this entire map is 8 feet. So you're looking at, what is that, 96 inches, something like that. Okay, so I could pretty much see all the way to back here. He had lined up his southern platoon here. I'm going to mark these as squads here, and I think he did one up here, right? And then his platoon leader was back here. And then this guy up, his northern group, he had 1, 2, 3, and I think he put the platoon leader behind the church. And that's fine. And then in town, you're looking at the 3 buildings. He had the 3 squads in those buildings. And, oh wait, maybe this platoon leader was actually over here, because he put the squad, this in-town platoon leader in the building. So there was a platoon leader over there. I think that's right, because this was a pretty solid line. And this, so he had set up like this and like that. And that was pretty much it. And his FO was, not his FO, his sniper was in this building as well. Okay, I had set up my first squad up here, paratroopers, and my second squad and platoon leader here, right? On the dry ground, because it's wet, between the hill and the river. So in between the two is where it's water. On this side of the river, it is not. I also put way over here my communications FSU or whatever it is. And by it just being on the table gives my FO gives my FO a reroll on comms checks. So we started to move. I don't think we got much further than here before we started coming under fire. And these guys did the same. They had made it to about right there, and artillery was hitting them from his FO. And so that pinned these guys right there, and they couldn't really advance any further. And that was my entire advance right there. My reinforcements started showing up on turn 2 and turn 3, and that was these 2 more platoons, which one of them I moved down here thinking I was going to cross the river, cross no man's land, and the other one I was thinking I was going to bring it down here, but I decided just to go ahead and rush them up the causeway. All right, so I cleaned up the map a little bit, and so this is pretty much where they're at. They've got their first platoon up here, second platoon in there, third platoon's down here scattered. They got a sniper and his FO right there. And then I've got a 2-squad airborne platoon, which one had made it as far as here, and the other one had made it as far as here. But again, this one was pinned down by artillery fire. Now, my FO was also calling artillery primarily on this platoon over here, and it was effectively pinning almost all of that squad. It was doing a really good job of pinning them, but because of the nature of the water, I was having a hard time advancing these guys. And also, because I think this is pretty close to 30 inches right here. So his other squads were starting to engage here. The ruling that I made was, if you're on the left side of this causeway, you're not shooting over the causeway at guys down in the low ground over here. But if you're over here shooting, yes. And because that's a 2-story building, I was like, yeah, you can shoot down in there. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's reasonable. I think it should be able to shoot over there. But like these squads here would not be able to shoot onto this side of the causeway. And that was one reason why. And also I had to deploy first. So, yeah, now this tree right here, just future knowledge, I did not know this, is a designated artillery spot. On the map, this entire road on both sides is covered with hedges, but for artistic license, I had placed some trees in there as well to give it a little bit of just give it a little what's the word, not arboreal, basically just make it look very wooded or whatever. Plus I made this a woods area and this was a orchard area on the map. Nice. Okay, and so get back to my pencil. So that's it as far as I gotten by about turn 3 or 4, something like that. And then at that point, I had decided that it would be better because I saw the progress that I was going to make down this causeway with this platoon here. I figured it was best and this is a pretty sizable platoon of 3 squads. I decided to move these squads this way and this squad this way, and then try to get these guys back onto the causeway so that we could do an attack like this. Okay, so that was what I was processing. and it was being successful. And then I brought in my Sherman and moved it all the way up to the bridge on its first action, and then on the next actions I charged it forward, and it made itself to somewhere right around here, because it can go 28 inches, right? 14 inches on the road per action. And it hit a mine, and we used the wrong mine rules. We used the mine rules as if it was a chit drawn, and instead of a mine, a hasty minefield. This causeway is supposed to be a hasty minefield, so I think I want to mark it as well, to let players know where that starts and where it ends. But it's done a little bit differently, and that's another thing. Did I put that on my battle group special rules? Unmarked minefield. When the M4 finishes each move action, roll a die. A 1 or a 2 hits a mine. The mine chit, I do believe, says something like, you hit a mine, right? So take 6 pen to the rear armor or something like this. Where this one says pen 1d6 versus the rear armor. So there would be a chance I could roll a 1 and have it a very minor penetrative hit instead of it being a 6 automatically, or maybe it was a 5 or a 6. Either way, this means there's a little bit better chance. Okay, so blew up the tank. The infantry had made it up to here, and then he called in his fire for effect, right? Which means anybody, his artillery just automatically hits. He doesn't have to call for fire, right? And that's a good thing. That's good for him. So, and that's about as far as I had successfully gotten by the end of the game. So, and that to me doesn't seem like, in 4 hours of playing, or probably three hours of actual game time, this was probably not 3 hours worth of game time, because I think I looked in the rules way too many times. We also rolled way too many dice and moved way too many units each turn. It should have gone a lot faster. Now, alternatively, I've thought of this. Let's go ahead and... Okay, with him being set up like that, that's fine. I should not have... This is a alternative tactic, something I think I probably should have done. I should have taken my 2 airborne infantry squads, and I should have set them up, one right there, maybe one right there, and then maybe the platoon command group right there, and then and left it, and on turn, maybe spread them out a little bit more, maybe put one of the squads over here and one of the squads over there, possibly, because I know he would call for fire on my guys. Plus, this would probably be a very prime target for his pre-designated target instead of this tree out here. So if that was his designated target, maybe I would want to put my FO maybe over here or something like that, because that probably would never be a designated target, and he doesn't have to be in this building. I just put him in there because I thought it would be a good, field. I probably could have put him over here on this side, but I don't get to see where the Germans deploy, I have to deploy first, right? So, but what I'm trying to get at is I'm gonna set my guys up. Maybe I could put one of the squads in this building, and then maybe another squad like right there, and then maybe the officer in this building back here, keeping them kind of separated a little bit. Not importantly, maybe putting the FO in the front of the bocage, because remember, you're still in cover if you're in the bocage, and put the FSU still, put him back there, that's fine. And then wait, right? I should have waited, not attacked, not moved, anything like that. Waited for turn 2 so that glider troops could come in down the road, and then on turn 3 there's going to be more glider troops, but on turn 3 have these guys run down the road, and they would get a full 10 inches of movement, right? And then the infantry, the airborne infantry, can fall in behind them, right? And then the third glider would show up right here. So I would have a long line on turn 3, right? Turn 1, wait. Turn 2, they move up to right there. And then on turn 3, they charge forward. These guys fall into place. The third platoon comes up the road. And then I'll have all my squads right there on the road. And we would have made it to about by there, approximately, by turn 3 or 4. Wait. 1, wait. 2. Yeah, so that's turn 3. That's what it would look like on turn 3. The FO obviously would be calling for fire, possibly on this group here, because if he decides to set up the same way. So the artillery, more focused on these two guys. So I'd be dropping the artillery right in this area. So if it deviated, it's going to possibly, because it has a 10-inch blast radius, which is pretty big. Okay, hopefully taking out these guys, either pinning them or what have you. Now my thought process is, on the defense, I was thinking this bridge would be his primary target. So I could have possibly put these airborne guys maybe in this area, and then that, yeah. So if I put my 2 airborne squads and maybe the senior, maybe closer right there, they could run up onto the causeway directly here without suffering any of the water, because this causeway comes right up against the water. So they could just go jump onto the causeway. And in that case, maybe we might be able to make it a little bit further. Or also maybe initiate the push on turn 2. And in that case, there would be a gap in here. The airborne guys would not be there. There'd be a little bit of a gap because these guys pushed up onto the road from the south, right? But that's okay. That much of a gap is not that big of a deal. It might also help if the opponent makes that his target or priority. I mean, he could have made it right here, or he could leave it right there, because if I'm running down this road, then that's it. Now another thing, speaking of which, the causeway is that is the causeway. There is a road at the top of the causeway, but the flood, there's actually a 6-inch wide section that's not flooded. And I could, and roads don't improve the movement of your infantry. So the airborne guys might be able to be beside these guys running along the side of the road, and being on this side of the road, they can't be shot at by these guys. They can only be shot at by these guys, right? So all of them could run down the side of one of these roads. That's a thought. That basically you're eliminating one of the platoons until you get up to this general area, and then there's going to be a serious firefight. Each squad will have to roll twice per turn to see if it takes casualties, which means it's going to take casualties. The airborne guys, being that they are veteran, there's a better chance of them not being pinned, right? They could be okay and keep running. And if I only receive pin orders or pin results in the morale, at the end of the turn, I can unpin them so they can keep moving. I feel that, and this is the tank hasn't even showed up. He doesn't show up till turn 3, right? So my FO is here, pretty much laying waste to these guys. So these guys are pretty much pinned and will stay pinned because of the artillery. The infantry should run down this side of the road because they're pinned. And then on turn 4 or 5, the Sherman shows up. And we already know he can get up here in less than 2 turns. So maybe by turn 5, I'm thinking the American infantry will be pretty much in this area, the tank will be in this area, and the second group of infantry will be in this area. So it would be like a big group of infantry, a tank, little group of infantry, if he doesn't blow up from mine, which, knowing the actual mine rules, there's a better chance that he might just be immobilized or blown up, whatever. And if I was the Germans, I would put a roadblock up here and maybe right wherever my, if I was going to designate that as my artillery, then I'd put the roadblock right there to make it where you got to drive up to the roadblock or run up to the roadblock, and then, it's going to slow them down in that area. So definitely keep them in that area longer for the artillery to hit. But knowing that everything comes in from here, I'd probably put the roadblock on the bridge, right? Why not? Just on the bridge, and then make the bridge the designated target. So the tank cannot cross the river. He has to use the bridge. So he can cross the obstacle, but it would have slowed him down a little bit. Maybe put one there and then one, just on the other side. So, you got to use both obstacles or whatever. You got to cross both obstacles. And yeah, put it, because I think this is technically where they were destroyed in the historical battle. But that's what I'm thinking is the best plan of action, is to actually just run down the causeway of death and just take your licks and go, instead of the slow death out here, which is really, and both of these units are my airborne units. They're the ones that have the best chance of surviving the causeway, and I put them out there. So that was a mistake. All right, so that was the after action. Something I learned too is this hat is too soft for the chits. So I grabbed my 101st hat, which is like very hard and foamy. It's like it's really a winter hat, I think, but you know, it's got foam inside of it and it keeps its shape. It's a good size, but it's still a hat. So I think I'm going to bring my bolt action dice bag. I'll dump all the dice out of it. I've got a bunch of dice in here. Yeah. I even have the bolt action. I got some D10s in there too. But yeah, I think I'm going to get rid of the dice that are in here and actually I could put the dice we're going to use in the game in here, and then once I dump those dice out, I could put the chits in here as well and leave, or maybe just put the chits in here. But that's going to be an easier place to reach in and grab for chits, I think. And then when we're done, you know, zip it up. Good deal. All right. Well, that was a long video. I didn't expect it to be this long. Thank you for coming out and checking it out. Stay tuned. I'm still working on my World War II project. I am going to be transitioning most of my efforts into my Napoleonic or American War of Independence project. I think I want to transition most of my effort into my Napoleonic's 15mm project, mainly because I've got a good grasp of what my rules are going to be. I don't know if you know this, but I am writing my own Napoleonic rules. And I plan to run a Napoleonic game at the next NashCon, which is over a year from now. But that'll give me enough time to paint up a bunch of units. And get everything ready for the convention. I think I'm going to make a bespoke table again, but it's going to be. But I think I want to. Okay, this is a little off topic. I mean, this is the World War II project update, but I think I want to make a modular terrain tiles, so that maybe they're clear on one side, but maybe on the other side they have a road, or no, just flat, I think is what I want to make. I don't think I want to put hills on them. I just want to make them flat. I have river tiles that I can lay out, and I've got road tiles. They're all flexible that I can lay out. But if I'm going to make a bespoke map, I want to make sure I got the hills and everything where they need to be, right? So, and then I can just lay the tiles out and boom, it's a map. And I'm thinking 4x6 is what I'm thinking, just to make it a nice, easy 4 2-foot tiles or 6 2-foot tiles, making it a 4x6. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna put. But then again, if I'm just gonna make it, okay, backing it up. If I'm just gonna make it flat, why not just lay a blanket down, right? If I'm just gonna make them clear terrain and I'm gonna put stuff on top of the terrain, why not just lay a blanket? So I think I'm gonna do that. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know. But that's a year and a half away. So next NashCon, not this coming up one in August. If you're coming to NashCon, be sure to hit me up. Let me know you're there. Tell me who you are. And then if you want to join the game, you're more than welcome. We're going to need 6 players. I probably could go with 7 players because but 7 players I don't think is good. What Mason had said, and it kind of sits well with me, is he's like, the first player is going to have his troops on the table at the start, right? And his guys might be damaged or destroyed early, and then he's going to be out of the game. So let him take the stuff that comes in later as part of his group, like the tank. or the weapons platoon or something. The weapons platoon is a waste. It is a it's 4 teams of 3 men, and every move you make on the causeway is a chance that they take a D3 casualties. Being that it's a 1/3 chance, 1 out of 3 moves, so to get to the other side on the causeway is probably 3 or 4 moves. So there's a guarantee on the odds, playing the odds, there's a guarantee that every one of those is going to take a D3 casualties, which guarantees that at least one of them will be eliminated. Because you roll a 1, you roll a 2, you roll a 3, and then you roll maybe a 2. So the guy that rolls a 3, he's eliminated. And that's a battle counter. So why send them across the causeway or anything? It's really, they're really not even worth. Now, if they are considered one large squad, right, which I don't know how the weapons platoons should operate. The machine guns are probably a squad, and the mortars are probably a squad. If that's the case, then there would be a reason to send them across, because in that case, they're each going to take. There's a chance that each of them will roll 1 die. And 1 die is not going to wipe them out. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to make them a squad. Same thing with the BARs and the light machine guns. I did not detach them, knowing that you only roll once per squad. And if you break them off, now you're rolling once for him and once for him. There's a chance that both of them can take wounds. Where if you keep them together, they're only going to take a D3. So it's better to keep them, as a full squad. All right. Well, I'm going to let you guys go, and I will see you in the next video.